And the way just a real rudimentary explanation of DNA is it's a helix. It's got these two strands that twist around, and in the middle are like rungs of a ladder. And when DNA makes a copy of itself, that helix splits, that ladder splits, and chemicals come and they fill in, they come into place and they match where the old one was, and then another rung comes up, and when it's done, there's two strands of DNA instead of one, and they're identical and they have the same letters. And by letters, those little rungs of the ladder are bases called adenine, thymine, cytosine, or guanine. It's a 4-letter alphabet. So like computers have ones and zeros, that's a 2-letter alphabet. DNA is a 4-letter alphabet with four letters, okay? It encodes all the information necessary for life, 500,000 to 3 billion letters, okay? And there's something very interesting about DNA, is that those letters form characters, and the characters form letters, and the letters form words, and the words form sentences, and the sentences form paragraphs, and the paragraphs form chapters. You ever heard of chromosomes? You can think of chromosomes as chapters in the book of DNA, and you have 46 of them. So it's like 46 chapters, and there's a whole hierarchy of language. Just like English has all those things on the right, all the things on the left, nucleotide, codon, gene, operon, regulon, chromosome, those are hierarchies of DNA information. DNA is not just a chemical, but the pattern in the chemical is a language. Okay? It has all the same characteristics as a computer language, or kind of like music, or any number of human languages. You can, if you went and you studied books on linguistics, most books, many books on linguistics at least mention that DNA has a semantical structure that's rather similar to human language. Okay? So here's the question. Is DNA a pattern like snowflakes and hurricanes, or is it a language? Well, DNA is a code. And that's a really important, the idea of a code, that there is a symbolic relationship, that when those letters are strung together, they form instructions. And the instructions tell a cell how to build a leg, a claw, an arm, a wing, an eye, just like your watch might have instructions to beep at you at 7:30 in the morning. It has instructions in the exact same sense as a computer language. Okay? A DNA molecule symbolically represents something other than yourself. Somebody could scrape a little cell of skin and put it under a microscope, and if they were smart enough and they had enough data, they could go, oh, that's you. Now, that strand of DNA is not you, but it is a representation of you, right? So, is DNA more like a stalactite, a tornado, a snowflake? Or is it more like music, maps, computer programs, and Chinese? It's like the latter. It is not like the former. So where do codes come from? Patterns like snowflakes and hurricanes, they occur naturally. We know that. Nobody has to design a snowflake. But, and this is kind of gets to the whole point of my presentation, random processes, accidents, weather, they don't create codes. A code is symbolic, right? If we agree that a quarter note is supposed to last this long, then we all agree on that. That is something that we have made a decision to agree on, right? Okay? And then somebody could go write a computer program that reads the notes, and the computer could go through a very mechanical process of reading the notes, but somebody would have had to program it first to do what it does. Okay? No one has ever discovered a code that was not ultimately designed by somebody. Ever. And you can take that to the bank. Nobody has ever discovered a code that wasn't designed. Nobody has ever discovered a symbolic relationship that wasn't designed. Because in nature, I got a rock. Go pick up a rock. Does this rock contain any symbols? No. It's a rock. That's all that it is. Nothing in the purely physical world creates plans, instructions, or codes or symbols. Okay? So, here's a way to think of it. Let's say that we go far from Earth. We go to some other solar system. Or we go to some planet very far from Earth, okay? You will not find any codes anywhere. Unless some form of life exists there that we don't know about, there's no codes, there's no symbols. If there's rocks, there's rocks. If there's molecules, there's molecules. If there's asteroids, there are asteroids. But there's no symbolic representation of anything. Because to have a symbolic representation, you have to have a mental process. Somebody has to make a decision. They have to make a choice. Can you derive quarter notes from the laws of physics? Could you open a physics book and say, here, show me where quarter notes come from? No. Quarter notes are something that people agreed on. It's a convention. You can't derive the English language, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You can't get that from the laws of physics. Laws of physics says, hey, you throw a rock up in the air and gravity pulls it back down. It doesn't explain where letters and symbols and ideas come from. That there's this infinite chasm between the physical world and the world of ideas, and DNA contains ideas. It clearly does. Go look it up in the dictionary. It's a code. This guy here in the picture, his name is Norbert Wiener. He was a mathematician at MIT. His heyday was in the 50s and 60s. He helped create many of the concepts, like if you have a cruise control in your car, he had a lot to do with figuring out all the math that would cause a cruise control to be accurate or to get a guided missile where it needs to go. He's one of the pioneers in the information age that we live in now and take for granted. And he said something very interesting. He said, information is information. It is not matter or energy. No materialism that does not admit this can survive the present day. What he's saying is, there's not, like, usually when you talk about the universe or what you talk about, there's matter and there's energy, right? Rocks and molecules and stuff, and then there's energy like sunlight. But what Norbert Wiener is saying, there's a third entity, is information is an entity, and it's separate from either of those two. You can't get information from matter and energy. It's a separate thing. He said this about 50 years ago. So, what this brings me to is a very, very simple argument, and this is what it is. Number one, DNA is a code. Go look it up in a dictionary. It's a code. 2, all codes that we know the origin of are designed. Therefore, DNA is designed.